Hello again and welcome to The Luxury Choice, a B2B sales and business podcast brought to you by the training team of George James Limited. My name is Steve Vaughan, I'm a senior sales trainer at George James and I'm also the host and producer of this podcast. And once again, I'm joined with my two colleagues, Prue Layton and Jonathan Cooper, for another discussion around a key aspect of technical sales. So Prue, welcome back. How are you?
Good, thank you, Steve. Happy that January's nearly at an end. It's always the worst month of the year. So
isn't it just? Yeah. We've all got paid. That's good news, isn't it?
Excellent.
Probably applies to everybody listening to the show as well. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Jonathan, how's things with you?
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, really good. We've had a really good start to the year. Things have kicked off very positively. And we had a lovely warm day up here in the north of the UK, or at least it was where I was. So managed to even get out in the garden, which was amazing for January.
It's been incredibly mild, hasn't it?
Good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the weather's, if you're not listening to it in the UK, we've had something like 2 months of rain, it seems, really. But the last weekend was gorgeous. Yeah, perhaps spring is on the way. Hopefully, let's keep our fingers crossed. So today, what are we going to talk about today, guys? Well, we're going to talk about the world of demonstrations, product demonstrations, something that we've all done personally, I know, something we've all been involved in. I can think of lots of great demonstrations that I've been involved in, lots of terrible demonstrations that I've done, or been involved in as well. So what we're going to look at today really is, what is the role of a product demonstration in the sales process? Or why do we have to do product demonstrations, if at all, really? And then some thoughts on some do's and don'ts around the old concept of demonstrations. And then at the end, we've actually got some questions for the show as well, which is great. So we're going to, I think we've all got a question each that we're going to knock around as a discussion topic at the end. So before we go any further, a bit of terminology, and I know this is something close to your heart, Jonathan. It's a demonstration, it's not a demo.
Yes.
I know we all use that as shortcut, but I know you particularly hate that phrase, and I'm not keen on it either, Jonathan, but say a bit more on that.
Yeah, well, it's sales slang, and I'd rather not use that word with a customer. Maybe I just need to get over myself. Maybe it's just me, okay? But yeah, we're not standing at the side of the street holding up placards, okay? This is a demonstration, not a demo. But as I say,
no, I'm a bit like you as well.
I might need to adapt.
We'll probably in this podcast say demo all the time, but I'm with you. I think for the customer, in the same way we don't talk about objections with customers, we talk about concerns, don't we? Correct. I think it is sales slang, but in this podcast we'll probably use both interchangeably.
So will I.
So let's go all the way back. So why do we do a product demonstration, Prue? Why do we actually get in front of the customer, wheel a big box into their lab or invite them to our premises, set all that stuff up, take the time that's involved? Why do we need to do one at all? Why do we bother?
That's a really simple question with lots of very complicated answers, Steve. So thank you for that one.
That's a hospital pass, isn't it?
Yeah. That's okay. It feels a bit like that, Steve. Why do we do them? Loads of reasons. Just a couple I want to sort of start off with. We do them because we've always done them. I think there's part of cadence where you have a big piece of kit, you do all the kind of meeting, uncovering needs, and we get to a stage where we do a demo because we're always very passionate and proud of the products that we have. And I think there's something very exciting about being able to show people exactly how great our products and software is. So there's part of that. I think competitors do them, so we feel we should do them as well. But I guess a more correct answer, if we're going to go for correct answers, is that we do a demonstration during the sales process at the point at which we want to prove all the things that we've spoken about with the customers. We want to be able to prove what we do more than just the specifications on a brochure or data that we've run. I think it's ultimate proof, to be honest. But therein lies the problem. Get it wrong, and the things that you're going to prove don't actually get proven. So they're quite high risk things to do, I think, demonstrations.
Absolutely. When we're working with real life customer samples, and particularly when they bring that steaming beaker of green goo from the back of the fume cupboard and say, "I bet you can't do that one." It is high risk, and they take a lot of planning. So, would there be a case for not doing a demonstration in that case, Jonathan? Would we ever be a time when we say not really?
Yeah, definitely. And I think first check any salesperson should make anyway is they should constantly be checking. What am I selling here? Am I selling the instrument, the solution, whatever it happens to be that I might be demonstrating, or am I selling the demonstration? I know I've been guilty, of selling the demonstration because I just couldn't get any other commitment from the customer. What I never analysed was what my hit rate was, but it just anecdotally just doesn't feel good sat here right now talking about it. So when shouldn't we do them? Well, we shouldn't do them, when it's clear that you're doing it because it's the only way you can stay in the sale. So that for me would be a really important. I think the other piece that comes into this is for me always the biggest topic, and that's one of the biggest topics, and that's the timing of a demonstration. And I think that is just fundamental because that I've always said there's a number of variables here which you need to judge on their merits for every demonstration you do. So for me, I'd look at, where are we in our sales process? Does it work for us? Do we have, all of the information we need to absolutely, as Prue said, prove everything we need to prove to be successful? Have we got a complete view of what that is? And, and the other one for me is where are we in the customer's purchasing cycle, right? Or in their purchase process? Where are we with that? If you're too far away from the end of it, it's very easy to end up having to do 2 demonstrations. I've heard about that happening on numerous occasions. I can think of cases where I've done 2 demonstrations.
I think we all can.
3, I don't think I've ever been guilty because I think somebody stopped me and told me to remove that opportunity from my sales funnel. But I can think of times I've done 2. And I think the other factor at play, of course, is the competition, right? And where are they going in this? Do we go first? Do we go last? But if we've more than one competitor, do we go in the middle? And I think all of these factors come into play, and they're all sort of moving parts of this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very easy having to, with the speed technology moves in our industry, end up having to do 2 demonstrations because actually you've demonstrated too early. The competition didn't jump, but when they did jump, they've shown something that at that moment previous we weren't even competing against. But maybe our instrument's been updated in some way. Maybe we've got some additional things that actually are relevant to the needs of the customer that we'd like to show. So I think that determines when you do one and when you don't do one. The timing. It's all too easy to go too early. That's for sure.
Right, I want to come back to the timing of the demonstration vis-a-vis the competition in a little while because I think there's some thoughts there, and I've seen some silly games played around that as well. But we'll come back to that one. But okay, so we would do a demonstration really as a proof statement to kind of validate what we've been saying in the sales process. We do it because the customer wants us to. We do it really as part of the whole qualification process. We talked about qualification in a previous podcast, but has the customer got any money? Are we talking to the right people? Can we do the application? I think all of those things obviously apply before we even start to think about demonstrations and wheeling products in front of people. I think also if we're being really honest with ourselves as technical salespeople, and I should hold my hand up here on this one, sometimes we do demonstrations because we like doing them. We like the kit. We enjoy playing with the kit almost. and it's perhaps more closer to our comfort zone doing a demonstration than perhaps spending the day prospecting on the phone. So sometimes, there's that pull of the demonstration to sort of get some product out.
Steve, I never had that problem because I was so useless from a technical perspective that I would do anything to avoid them. So, I'd start, if I couldn't sell it from the brochure, then, I'd try and sell it via a reference. If I couldn't sell it via a reference, I'd try and do it by just getting a single sample run, etc. I'd go up this ladder before I got to the demonstration.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's move things forward then. So we've agreed to do a product demonstration, whether we're going to take the product to the customer or the customer's coming to to us, and certainly for some of the products that we've sold, that the latter was the only option because it was a big instrument and needed facilities and things, really. But for whatever reason, we've agreed to do that. We've got the agreement to do that. So what are the things we need to think about, Prue, before we even start to book dates in the diary and all those things? What kind of things perhaps do we need to think about?
Well, I think in terms of booking dates in the diary, sort of reflect back on the timing side. We need to book dates in the diary. If this is the ultimate proof, which I fundamentally believe it is, it has to be really close to when the customer's going to make a decision. The ultimate proof and the impact of showing how great your system and your people perform, because it's always also about the people, not just the product. It has to be very close to that timing when the customer is going to decide which way to go in a competitive sale. So getting the timing right is important. But I think the other thing in terms of what we got to think about is how much time do we need? How are we going to use that time wisely? And who from the customer point of view do we need there? Not who's willing to come, but who absolutely needs to be there. Great. And coordinate it for their availability. I'm sure that you've all been the same. I sometimes felt that it was much more about when we could do the demo and when we could fit it in and when kit was available, as opposed to really getting that sweet spot for the customer, close to decision, keep people available, get the timing right.
Yeah, I think that's right, particularly when we're working with, say, demonstration chemists who are supporting several of us in the field. It's their availability, and if you've only got one of the instrument, when's that instrument going to be available? When's it being used for other demonstrations or even being serviced? All those things do factor in, absolutely. What are your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
I've always reflected that the major reason I've lost orders in my life is that I've talked to the wrong people at the wrong time about the wrong thing. Why did I lose most of the demonstrations I lost? Because actually I couldn't get the right people to the demonstration, the people who are actually going to make the decision. And I do accept sometimes, that actually can be really difficult. But
yeah, sure.
Did I try hard enough? Did I keep the customer's timeline enough in my mind? Not sure. I think sometimes our demonstration facilities get so booked up, we're just happy to get a date, right, when we can actually go and perform a demonstration. Or when we can take equipment even on the customer's site, if it lends itself to that. So, I think you're having to sort of balance those internal pressures, with ultimately, what's right for the customer and, delivering a great customer experience as part of it. So, it is just fundamental. You can do the best demonstration in the world, but if you deliver it to the people that don't make the decision, you can end up losing the deal. Let's face it, I've done it the other way around as well. Sometimes it's not been the best demonstration, but we've had all the right people there. We've been able to handle their concerns there and then, and actually we won the deal. So sometimes you win with I won't say the worst data, but less than optimum data and outcomes. Sometimes you lose it with the best.
Absolutely. Yeah, good thoughts there, guys. So, all right, so the day's come. We've got the instrument available, the demonstration chemist is available. The great day has come. We're all excited. The customers turned up. So what are the things we need to think about in terms of the day, if it's a full day or whatever the time is, Prue? What are the things we need to think about there in terms of objectives and making sure that the day is as successful as possible?
I think it's understanding how much time we've got available, and I think the demonstration is only part of the event, if you know what I mean. The time in front of the instrument or the software is only a part of it, and I think we can sometimes forget about the beginning and the end, which are just as important as the time in front of the system. Beginning, how are we going to welcome people? Are they going to feel welcome? What are we going to do in terms of showing the greater depth and what we can do as an organisation? That's a really important part of it. So how do we manage that? How much time are we going to have in front of the instrument or the software or whatever we're showing? And finally, leaving enough time to wrap up. I have really struggled sometimes with being customers are ready to go. You can see that they're ready to go. They've either got a train to catch, or they want to avoid the traffic on the M25, or they've got to get back for an event. And we're still trying to show them yet another thing on the system. We think they're here. Come on, we want to show you this. We want to show you that. And we don't wrap it up properly. So I think time management. And as a salesperson, you're often in charge of that. You know, you're often in charge of managing the whole day in the schedule. Right. So make sure that we do the intro when we're ready to go. Have we got the right people there? Has anything changed? What have they seen recently that wowed them? Really important that we do that. Demonstration, tune to what they want to see, preparation of what everybody's going to do. And that, don't push the time and not do that final wrap up. It's almost the whole point. Your best chance to get commitment from the customer, your best chance to handle any concerns that they have or seen. Don't not do it. I think it's so important to leave enough time to do that, where customers can reflect back and you have a chance to really make the best of the day, or half day, or hour, or whatever it is.
There's some really key points there, I think, Prue. Obviously, the importance of preparation, from what you've said there, knowing that the time that's available, how long the customer's got available for the demonstration, really. I think you mentioned about the introduction part of it, really, and you and I both worked at the same company for a while. We both worked at a site which was part of the Thermo Fisher Group, and I was responsible for the site. We had those lovely demonstration facilities with the big glass windows on the side, and one of the things that you're trying to do when you do a demonstration is sell the brand as well as sell the product, and we always made the point of giving people a walk around and a look around the site, really. And then the final part of it, that wrap up, I am guilty of saying that one of the teams that I ran at one stage, we had a separate room, we called it the closing room. and they didn't really leave until we'd had a formal wrap up after the demo, with a demonstration, with a cup of coffee and whatever, and agreed on what happens next. Because there is always a what happens next, Jonathan, isn't there? It shouldn't just sort of finish in midair, should it?
Yeah, correct. And I love this whole idea of, is it right to formally choreograph the day? Well, actually, maybe it is, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that is a great expression to use, because time is precious, time is limited. Generally, we've got way more we could show the customer than we've got time to do. But actually, how does that reflect against actually what they've come to see and what we need to be, what we need to prove? So, one of the things that I always found sort of help sort of kick things off and then enable you to wrap things up was always having written success criteria. Those for me were fundamental. Those were a discussion even before the customer, got anywhere near a demonstration. If the customer was happy to commit to some written success criteria, and of course we were happy as a business to accept those, what a great thing to put on the board. And I like that formal sort of kickoff to a demonstration when you sit down. I think it's a great point. Has anything changed? We should always be qualifying. Things, again, change so quickly in our marketplace sometimes. Let's check that those written success criteria agreed up front, give a focal point to the day, and enable us to get to the end and actually be able to gain that ultimate commitment and ask for the business based on what they've seen and what we've been able to prove. It goes back to the high risk, doing a demonstration fundamentally anyway, and as somebody once said to me, was best demonstrations the one that's done at the install. So you actually don't do a demonstration install ever, okay? But we have.
Let me show you what you bought.
Yeah. So I love that. And could I just pick up on the other point that Prue raised in there, which is about the presence of the salesperson, right? I think you fundamentally, as a salesperson, should be present for every demonstration. Yes, you may have a demonstration chemist, you may have an application scientist, whatever title is used for that role within your business, largely leading the day. Hey, you could be doing it yourself as the salesperson, which changes the dynamic, of course. But if there is somebody else there with you, another reason for choreographing this, another reason for thinking about the timings, you cannot just leave the demonstration chemist, the application scientist there with the customer all day, right? It just isn't, for me, it isn't on. As the salesperson, however well you've briefed anybody, there are things that you will always understand about that sale that perhaps your partner internally won't. And, as a customer once said to me, and I think I've used the expression before on this podcast, as a salesperson, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. as an application scientist or demonstration chemist, you're innocent until you prove yourself guilty. That's the point. Okay?
Absolutely.
The customers will tell your colleagues things they might not tell you, and they could be the missing parts of the jigsaw. So, the part of the choreography for me, yes, is be present as the salesperson, but leave time, for the demonstration chemist, the application scientist, to have time with the customer alone, where they can have a really interesting conversation without you being present. So anyway, so there's a couple more things for me which are just crucial in all of this.
No, I think you make some great points. And I remember having to tell a salesperson off once because they'd gone upstairs to write emails while the demonstration chemist was running the demonstration. And I said, no, you've got to be there. I mean, there's lots of reasons why you've got to control the timing, as you said, Prue, breaks and things as well. Correct. And it's what do we do if something goes wrong?
Contingency plan, correct.
It's a good time to give them a tour around the building while the demonstration chemist works out what's going on. That's your job as a salesperson, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that. What I call the non-product related value. You mentioned the tour, Steve. That for me, the tour of the facility. Sometimes we can get just very used to that, and we're kind of almost blasé about it. It's something that's so familiar. We don't appreciate perhaps the value it really has, and something like that, especially if you've got any manufacturing attached to the site. I mean, wow, that can really interest our customers, and it helps. Paint the full picture, right? Not just the instrument, but sometimes we have to prove other values. So, thank you.
No, we do absolutely. All right, well, let's go back to that timing point then. So, when it's a competitive sale, as they normally are, and a customer's looking at least one other person, which they normally are, I've seen all kinds of scenarios about when do we do the demonstration vis-a-vis the competition. Do we do it before them? Do we do it after them? And I've seen and I've stopped some silly games, cancelling demonstrations and reorganising demonstrations because we've found out the customer is going to see the competition first. So what are your views, Prue, as to the pros and cons of the timing of the demonstration against the competition?
So I think ideally we always want to demo last.
If possible, yes.
Ideally and close to when the customer's going to make a decision. So that's the ideal world. And the reason that it's ideal to do that is if the customer has seen something at a competitor demonstration which has really wowed them or has really interested them, we have an opportunity, if we go last, to cover that off or in some way manage it as a real or false objection or show something that we had not planned to show. Because that can always, you can't show everything. It doesn't matter how long the customer has.
Nor should you, I think, as well.
No. So we're selective. So that's that. It's ideal. It also allows us to ask for a real commitment because they've seen everybody. However, we can really, in a real world, I think we have to be able to manage both and understand how we're going to approach both. If you demo first, you can plant some real kind of landmines, if you like, that maybe a competitor will have a problem dealing with. So understand where you are in the schedule that the customer has, as close as possible to other demonstrations that the customer is going to visit. We don't want too much time lag, but neither do we want to aggravate people by cancelling or moving around, or because they've heard it before, and it does not ring true. So ideally go for the last demo. If you can't, what are you going to do in order to make whoever's going to come up last's life difficult? Have a strategy, make sure that you do it.
Yeah, great point. And one of the things I used to say to my team was, we need a reason to go back to see the customer, Jonathan. So the competition can't close it off. There's something that we've got as an outstanding action. So perhaps a demonstration report or to go back and present some data. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I'd probably just quickly go back to, Prue's great point here. As they say, know thy enemy. Okay, so I was trained, get last demonstration. Okay, and you know what? It worked a lot of the time, but it didn't work all of the time. And, in terms of timing, I think you should look at each case on its merits. Know thy enemy, right? What are they selling against you? How do they sell it okay? And who are the people involved? Because that actually also, plays a part for me. I can think
completely.
historically of some companies where I thought, if I don't get the last demonstration, I'm toast. And they got some seriously good people that will take this one from me. So, but I never liked manipulating the customers either. That was something I never liked doing.
We must never do
playing
that.
those games.
No.
I avoided them like the plague. Did I occasionally do it? Yes. I think I probably did cancel the occasional one, but as I gained more experience and matured, I stopped. But I think you're right. Sometimes you've got that chance to just set the benchmark. You can set the bar so high. But again, it's about knowing what you're competing against and who you're competing against. You can set the bar so high, nobody can reach it. And so there's merits either way.
So I think it's recognising where you are.
That question I think you'd asked me, which I've now.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
No, I've forgotten what the question was.
It was a reason to go back in.
Yes. So absolutely.
We all have a problem with short-term memory these days. It's a reason to go back in. Yeah.
Leaving the door open. Yeah, and you need to think how you're going to do that. So before you start the demonstration, before you plan this one, think, how do we leave the door open in a meaningful way, right?
Completely.
And that, you're dead right. It could be a sample report. It could be a follow-up presentation to somebody in the purchasing team. It could be a meeting at a higher level, at the exec level or senior director level. All sorts of ways of doing it. Sometimes you don't even want to answer all of the questions at the demonstration. Sometimes actually you want to leave something unanswered because it then gives you a reason to go back in again. But
absolutely,
making sure you do have that opportunity is absolutely key for me. In amongst all of this, of course, I would always say and people call it various things. I always called it a sponsor. Have your sponsor present, okay? So if that person wants you in, they see you as credible, they're credible with all of the other decision makers, the other stakeholders. Great.
Just for the benefit of the listener who might not know what that term is, Jonathan, what do you mean by a sponsor?
So just that, somebody who sees you as credible, they really want your solution in their
in the customer side.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And they can get you access to all of the the other key people in the decision making unit. If that person is present, they're I think it increases your chances significantly anyway. And B,
it does.
They can sometimes give you the advice on what you should do to leave that door open, which is great. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's like your fan on the inside, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Okay, two more questions or 2 more points I'd like to just bring up on demonstrations before we look at the questions that we've had to the show. So first of all, and I'll leave this open to both of you really, what do we do when the customer does bring that unexpected sample? That sort of, as I mentioned earlier, that sort of bucket of goo from the back of the fume cupboard or something they've had in the fridge for 10 years and they've blown the dust off it and they say, I bet you can't test that one. What do we do? How do we handle that? I've got my thoughts, but
you don't do it.
Absolutely.
When they blow the dust off and go, I bet you can't do this, I go, no, you're absolutely right. Now let's look at what we have done.
I agree, but why?
Well, of course, first of all, we don't know its provenance, okay? We don't know who prepared it, right? Or, we don't know perhaps even why it was prepared. What's the purpose of bringing that? What are they trying to do here? So before
they're trying to catch us out. They're trying to catch us out.
Well, they may not be, right? And that's my point. I would want to know their motive for bringing that, okay? Could be a genuine interest, okay? And I know it's a dangerous thing to say, well, hey, if we could do that, would you buy it? Is a way of getting something back in return, but probably wouldn't advocate that too highly. But I would want to understand their motivation first and understand where it's come from, why they want it run, why has it now appeared, whereas before there was no mention of this whatever you called it, this green steaming goo, I think you called it, Steve. Yeah, broadly, what are they actually testing here? As I was always taught and understood from a very young age with this one, what are we testing here? We're not testing the ability of the scientist to do a ton of method development work, right, on an unknown sample, right?
Absolutely.
That's not what we're testing, right? If they want to do that, I'm sure we could charge them appropriately for a consulting project, but we leave that,
Great
maybe
point.
we should try and disconnect that from this sale. But understand their motives first. What did Stephen Covey say? Take time to, seek first to understand before seeking to be understood.
Absolutely. And Prue, you're dead right. We just don't do it, because all they're doing is testing how clever our demonstration chemists are, and how, it's not fair. Basically, it's not fair on to anybody, to the demonstration chemist, to everybody present, to waste time effectively doing method development on the fly. It's not professional, and we just shouldn't do it. So the other question I wanted to ask, and this is something that happened to me a lot in my sales career, particularly at the start when I was selling smaller products. So I'd go on site and do the demonstration rather than bringing the customer to the lab, and I'd love your thoughts on this one, Prue. What do we do when the customer says, "Can you leave it with me for a week?"
The puppy dog close.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I've heard that too.
That's what I was always.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, the customer say, "Oh, we'd like to try it. Can we borrow it for a week?" What do we do on that one?
I think that we have to anticipate that we're going to be asked that. It's likely that we're going to be asked that, and it depends on how your business deals with that. It might be that we're happy for it to be left for a limited amount of time, and totally understand, who's going to use it, what are you going to do with it. And as Jonathan said earlier, which was a great point, what's the success criteria? Because, the puppy dog close is around the fact that if you leave somebody with something and it's incredibly useful, they won't give it back to you, and that's okay. But it could be that you have commitment on the system and you can't do it. So anticipate it might happen and understand how you might deal with that, I think. Yeah. I'm always nervous about leaving instrumentation or software even with customers, because we haven't had time to fully make them familiar and comfortable using it. So there's a high risk that they'll find it difficult to use, or it may not be as simple as we made it look when we used it. So it's really variable, but think that it might happen and discuss internally how you're going to deal with it.
I think it's a great point. And my experience, particularly if it's quite complex piece of equipment, if we leave it for a week, nobody ever uses it, because if it's sitting next, your new shiny box is sitting next to their old dusty, rusty one that they've used for years, the users will default to what they know always. And it's human nature, isn't it, Jonathan? They'll use what they know rather than your shiny new box, because it will be fear of the unknown, won't it?
Yeah, it's often what I saw happen. Prue raised a great point about, who's going to use it. It's actually, you probably need more than that. You need somebody who's actually going to, grab hold of this thing and make sure it is actively used. Have you got the time to make sure they get the best out of it through, best training? There may be some general, preventative maintenance required over that period as well. So possibly, loads of things to check. And in academia, do double check. And I'm not saying you're going to say no, but you might decide it's strategically the right thing to do. But check they're not going to complete their research project, by borrowing, having this basically on loan free.
That's a good point,
You might decide, actually, it's fair dues. Actually, you'd like to help this department because you see them as, playing a key part in your future business. Fine. But just know what you're walking into with it. The major reason it fails is that there is no, again, there's no criteria set, and there is no, person on their side who really champions it, who really, takes it and, communicates clearly to everybody that, we're trialing this, we're using it for X, Y, and Z, please come along, take a look at it. And whilst you're doing that, you should have somebody there on site from time to time. Pick up any questions, show any, just in case they're making some fundamental errors in the way they're using it. Easy done. Yeah. So you've really got to stay connected to make sure these are a success. Otherwise, I mean, my what I've seen, just my experience, I've seen a lot of them just don't result in anything. They just don't work. But
no, they
do
don't.
It well.
No,
it's a great puppy dog close.
I've written that down, puppy dog close. Yeah, I remember that one. I've never come across that one in 35 years of sales.
You too. On speed, of course. Great.
Oh, fantastic. So, guys, great conversations around demonstration. So I think, as always, the importance of planning, having an objective, agreeing whose roles and responsibilities, the importance of qualifying. We should say for the listener, by the way, demonstration training is something that's part of our portfolio. We do often work with applications people on good demonstrations, and also good presentations as well. So if you'd like to know more, you know how to get hold of us. Anyway, let's look at the questions that we've had. So we've been delighted that we've had some questions into into the show now. Now, we can only sort of look at these in a fairly superficial way because some of these questions I think would be a whole podcast in their own right, really. But thank you for those people who sent them in. And just a reminder, if you do want to send a question to us, you can email us at podcast@georgejames-training.com. And it's a capital P on the podcast, by the way, just to make sure he arrives safely with us. So, Prue, you've got a question, I think. What was the question that you got sent to you?
I did have a question, and it shows how far our reach is. This is from one of our Swiss customers. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So the question from the customer says, when a customer asks me about the price of my products early on in the sale, even though the configuration and solution has not been fully clarified, how do I defer the question?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Should I give a ballpark figure, or should I totally avoid going into price at all at that early in the conversation? That was the question from our Swiss question. One of our Swiss listeners.
Yeah, and by the way, the questions that we've got here, everybody's asked us to be anonymous, so that's fine. We totally understand that. That's a great question. I've had lots of thoughts either way on that one over the years. People have said to me, "Don't mention the price. Whatever you do, don't mention the price." And other people, the manager said to me, "We've got to tell the price straight up front." So, what are your thoughts, Jonathan?
That's brilliant, isn't it? Prue reads it out, you toss it around, then throw it to me. What a good one.
Yeah. That's my job as the host. That's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think a point I would make here is expect this, right? This will happen on a fairly regular basis. So I think being confident in your response is key. So, and whatever that response looks like. So, so to me, one of my favourite ways of dealing with that is to say to the customer, "Look, Mrs. Customer, I would be delighted, to share that information with you. Before I can do that, because we have such a large number of options and possible configurations, I really need to understand first and foremost, what it is you're looking to achieve, the applications you're looking to perform, and what you want to do, in your lab, how does it fit with maybe the overall goals of your lab, et cetera, et cetera." So there's a load of stuff I need to understand first. And then I ask a really simple question. Would you be happy if we worked in that way, right? Or would you be happy with that approach? And I can hand on heart say I've had very few customers ever turn me down, okay, when I've had that conversation. I think beyond that, in handling that price conversation, I got a great tip from a very wise man once. Thank you. No, I won't name him, but he's CEO of a fairly large organisation now. Great guy, taught me a lot. And he said, "Quote a range, Jonathan. Right, low enough to stay in, high enough to stay in." Okay, and that was a really good piece of advice. So depending on the configuration, the price can range from X to Y. Okay, and the more detailed our conversation becomes, the more accurate I'm going to be able to be in terms of the actual price of this at the end of the day. So that was a really good piece of advice. Okay,
yeah, it is. It is.
Sometimes what I found is by going into that detailed discussion, actually the customer doesn't come back to the price again. It's really strange. So, we go into a discussion about, their business, their goals, their work they're doing in their lab, etc. And that necessity to know the price at that moment in time seems to go away for some reason.
Interesting,
I'm sure there's some psychology
in
there I don't understand, but there's at least a couple of things. But know your words, expect it, be confident with it, right? And
and be proud of your price, I guess, really.
Well, hey, absolutely. Yeah. And always remember.
Prue, I know you.
I was just going to say
on the range point. Let me just pick this up with Prue if I can before I forget it, Jonathan. On the range point, Prue, I know you handle this really well because I've been on a course when you've handled this one. So, how do you handle this? Sort of say when somebody says, "Can you give me a range? Can you give me a ballpark?" I know you handle that really well.
Yeah, I think, Jonathan's right in terms of low enough to stay in and high enough to stay in. But the one thing that when you do give a range, there's only one number the customer remembers.
Absolutely.
And the number the customer remembers is the lowest number you gave them. That's the one that sticks in their head. So be very careful about not sharing the best ever price you had for your X demo model at the end of the year when it was gloves off. Be reasonable about it because that's the one that they will come back to you with.
Great point, absolutely. And if the customer is only interested in price, which is never the case, but if they are insisting the only thing that matters is price, it's probably a good time to walk away, because the kind of businesses that we work for, we're never going to be the cheapest, are we?
No.
And nor should we be.
No.
So, good. Great question. Thank you for our Swiss listener for that question. And Jonathan, you got one as well, I think.
Yeah, I got one from the UK here.
Okay.
A really good question. I think from what we're seeing, Steve and Prue, increasingly prevalent. So when making calls to prospect for new customers, I keep getting stuck with the person on switchboard or reception. They tell me to send an email. The emails are not being replied to. Hey, surprise, surprise. That wasn't on the question, by the way.
Yeah.
What else can I try, please? So a great question. Thank you for that one.
All right, great. Well, we've got somebody coming on the show in a couple of weeks' time that might be able to help us on that, but we'll come back to that in a second. But Prue, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted about whoever this was in the UK, because they're picking up the phone. So brilliant.
Absolutely. Well done. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a few things to think about. One of the things is, if you get through to switchboard and you ask to be put through to the lab and you don't have a name, it's very likely that you are going to be held up at the switchboard. So do a little bit more research and find out the name of the person that you should be speaking to. If you have a name, that will make a difference. I think the other thing is that be confident. So I say this quite often with people that I work with. If I'm calling through to speak to you, Steve, and you're the head of the lab, and I get to switchboard, I say, it's Prue Leighton for Steve Vaughan. And it sounds like you're expecting my call, even though I haven't said it. And it's amazing how somebody will automatically put you through. If that doesn't work, understand that people on switchboard or gatekeepers probably keep core office hours. So one of the things is they're often not at their desk much before 9. They're often away from their desk at lunch break. And they may have somebody who substitutes for them who's easier to get through, and they finish at 5. So try calling before 9, during lunch, or after 5. You never know. You might get someone who will easily put you through.
Fantastic
But
idea.
be persistent.
And Jonathan, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, well, Prue stole my primary idea. Call out of hours. Love that one. The other one,
Because you've all had the same training, that's why.
and it isn't. And I don't rate this as being that devious. But if you know the extension format, so it could just be 4 digits, right? Just dial the number. When it asks for an extension, just take any extension number, okay? And when you get through, just say, sorry, I was looking to speak to such and such in the laboratory. And it's amazing how many times you get put through. Am I allowed to say that on
That's
this
cutting.
podcast? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course you are, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So there's one way. The other way is, and again, you need to do a little bit of homework here, is can you get a referral, okay? Can you get a referral, right, to somebody in that lab? Again, you've still got to get past the reception, but I think having that referral does make you sound a lot more confident, when you've got that. And it's,
Completely.
And it sounds like you're calling with purpose. So, yeah, that's what I'd add on top of that. Okay.
Good point. And on that referral, something I've always liked to use is when anybody thanks me for something. Thanks for doing that, Steve. It's a great time to say to that person, "You're welcome. I wonder if you could help me." That's the time to do it. And if we said, "I wonder if you could help me. I'm trying to get hold of Prue in the lab. Is there any chance you could introduce me?" It's the great time. When everybody says, "Thank you for doing that. Appreciate you doing that," that's the right time to ask that question. So good. One last one from me, but we haven't got time to go this into a lot of detail because I know you guys have got another meeting coming up soon. But we've had a question from a French listener on this one, actually. And it's in English, thankfully, so it's not going to test my French skills. The question is, what is the most effective way to contact a prospect on LinkedIn? And the follow-up question was, how can I catch attention of my prospects on LinkedIn? I think that's 2 questions, and I don't think we've got time to get into that in a lot of detail. And if you listen back to an early show where we spoke to Martine, of course, we talked about LinkedIn there, and I am hoping to do a full show, a full podcast on LinkedIn coming forward. But on the contact a prospect, clearly, unless you have a paid version of LinkedIn, you have to get connected with them. If you can't get connected with them, then they're not going to be able to contact them, really. And so many people just seem to send the bog standard LinkedIn connection request. We all get them, yeah? I see you nodding, Prue.
Yeah. Make an effort. If you want to be noticed by somebody, then, actually personalise that connection request. The ones that I got caught me, I think, attention was the audio recorded ones. They're quite intriguing on LinkedIn. Instead of typing, you can send a little voice clip. Defy me not to go, I wonder what they sound like. I will always listen to them.
I think you have to be connected before you can do that. But I think when you get connected with somebody, and again, this is a big topic for another show, but when you get, let's say if I sent you a connection request, Prue, and you accept, very rare do you come back and say, hey, Steve, thanks for sending me a connection request.
Yeah.
You just, to use the phrase they used to use in Star Trek, we've opened a channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I have to instigate further communication. So then that's when the voicemail message might be an idea. Or even if, and this is going to be way out of all our comfort zone, even a video message. You can send a video message now. I know, yeah, scary. But you can use, on the LinkedIn messaging app on your phone, you can leave a 1-minute video message. And again, I'm sure people would pick that up and play back. Yeah, your thoughts, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think I'd just probably add one thing, because Steve, you're very much our resident specialist and leader on this topic. So I think the one thing that I would definitely always add to that is always be thinking, what's in it for the other person? What's in it for them?
Absolutely.
So can you demonstrate, you've done a little bit of research, can you demonstrate that you've actually thought about them for, a few minutes, and if you can find something that's relevant to them, there's every chance they will connect. I think the other critical thing is make sure your profile's up to date. I'm no expert on all of this, but make sure your profile's up to date, because, they can see who you are immediately. You're qualified almost immediately. And of course, they also see common connections. But I fundamentally believe these days, as a salesperson, you need a big network, right? The most successful salespeople in the future, one of those attributes will be a significant network, that they really do work and work hard.
And my last thought on that topic, and my last comment would be, as you said, make it about the customer, not about you. So many people's profiles are their resumes, their CVs, because we probably all went on LinkedIn initially because we were looking for jobs, let's be honest. And instead of writing your profile about somebody that was trying to hire you, write your profile about somebody that might want to do business with you.
I think that'll be my next action now after this.
Hey, I'm not saying mine's perfect, by any means. So, look, guys, Prue, Jonathan, it's been really, really great catching up with you today and knocking around the topics of demonstrations, and also thanks to our listeners for the questions. Don't forget, if you want to send a question in, you can be anonymous like the people who've already sent a question in. We'd love to hear from you. It's just podcast@georgejames- .com, capital P for podcast, or you can just LinkedIn messaging us, or if you know us personally, of course, and good old-fashioned phone calls, emails, and all those things work as well. So I'm back again in 2 weeks' time with a guest, and really it follows on from the second question we had. I've got a guest on the show coming up, a guy called Anthony Steers, and he's called himself the telephone assassin, would you believe? And his business is all about how do we get through to people. So it really does set up really well, the whole idea of how do we make appointments, and why cold calling isn't dead. But in the meantime, thanks very much for listening to the show. If you don't already subscribe to the show, then we'd love you to do so. It's a way of making sure you get every episode. You might even get to hear it before other people. So please follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you use either of those. And also, please give us a review. Reviews do help us in lots of mysterious ways. So if you get the chance to leave us a little review, we'd really appreciate it. In the meantime, Jonathan, Prue, thanks for your time. And we'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah. See you then.